Let me share my story with you. I'm Kara, and for nearly 2 decades, I've been married to Easton. We first crossed paths in college, quickly fell in love, and tied the knot a few years after we graduated. Soon after, we welcomed our son, Austin, into the world. We lived a typical suburban life. Easton was in sales, I managed a local grocery store, and our weekends were filled with Austin's soccer games and family barbecues. One November morning, which started off like any other, took a sudden turn. After dropping Austin off at school, he was a sophomore, already dreaming about college and scholarships. I decided to check our bank accounts before heading to work. We had been diligently saving for Austin's college tuition in a special account, a commitment we both took seriously. Lately, Easton had been secretive, mentioning a major deal he was working on that he claimed would benefit us all. Trusting him, perhaps too much, I logged into our online banking from my car parked outside the grocery store. The shock came swiftly. Our account balance was at zero. Not just low, but completely empty. Panic and confusion overwhelmed me. I called Easton right away, my voice barely a whisper, fearing the worst. Easton, where's the money for Austin's college fund? His response was too calm, a tone I knew all too well, one that signaled trouble. What money? Calm down, Kara. There must be a mistake with the bank. I logged in again, hoping for a different outcome, but the result was the same. The money was gone. No mistake, it's all gone. What's happening, Easton? I don't know, okay? I'll sort it out. Just go to work, and we'll talk later, he said, hanging up before I could protest. Unable to shake off my concerns, I called in sick, turned the car around, and drove straight to the bank. The manager, Marlo, who knew us personally, showed me the transaction records. Her face turned pale as she revealed a series of large transfers from the account over the past few years, all authorized by Easton. Furious and heartbroken, I stormed home to confront him. As soon as he saw me, his face fell. He knew he was caught. Kara, before you say anything, save it, Easton. For years, you've been taking money from our son, I shouted, my voice loud enough to echo through the house. No, I was investing it in a business venture, a surprise for us, he tried to explain. A surprise? You surprised someone with a birthday cake, Easton, not by emptying our son's college fund. Each word I spoke was laden with bitterness. He began to respond, then stopped, seeing the resolve in my eyes. This was serious, and he knew it. I need to think. I can't even look at you right now, I said, walking away, overwhelmed by betrayal, anger, and the daunting prospect of how we would now afford Austin's education. The following morning, the tension was palpable. Easton and his mother, Barbara, were already in the kitchen when I walked in. I want every penny returned to Austin's account today, I demanded, my voice firm yet calm. Barbara scoffed, rolling her eyes. Oh, please, Kara. Don't be so dramatic. Easton was just trying to help the family. I turned to her, stunned by her dismissiveness. Dramatic? How can you say that when our son's future was on the line? The conversation was far from over, but it was clear it would be a difficult one. We are discussing the future of our son, Barbara. How can you simply defend him in this situation? Besides, Barbara argued that it's high time Jim learned to be independent. Why should he depend on us to finance his education? I was stunned by her words. Are you suggesting that our promise to our son is worthless? That we should just abandon him to manage on his own? Barbara shook her head dismissively. You're exaggerating the issue, making a mountain out of a molehill. I won't stand here and be accused of being irrational for caring about our son's future, I retorted, feeling my face flush with frustration. Easton, rubbing his temples in exasperation, intervened. Kara, let's calm down. We're clearly not going to see eye to eye on this. No, we're not, I firmly replied, my decision clear. I want a divorce, Easton. Silence enveloped the room, and even Barbara halted her arguments. A divorce over this? Kara, think it over more carefully, Easton urged, his voice low. I've never been clearer. You've jeopardized our son's future, and you expect me to accept it? I cannot, and I will not. Moreover, I want the house as compensation for all the money you've squandered. Easton's laugh, harsh and mocking, filled the air. You think you can take everything? I'll contest every claim in court. I felt Barbara's scornful gaze, but disregarded it. Argue all you want, but I'm done here. Come on, Austin, we're leaving, I called out to my son, who had likely heard everything from his room. As Austin and I packed our belongings, Barbara's taunts echoed behind us. You're making a mistake, Kara. You'll regret this. Without looking back, I led Austin out, feeling parts of my past life shedding away, but also a peculiar sense of freedom. Austin and I then drove to my parents' house. Not a week later, Easton and Barbara barged into my parents' home, claiming ownership. In the kitchen with my mom, I heard the front door burst open, and there they stood, Easton smug, Barbara livid. We've hired top lawyers, Kara, Easton declared, as if on the battlefield. They'll prove my mother funded our home. You might want to rethink your demands, unless you want to lose everything. Barbara stepped up, pointing at me aggressively, and forget about the money Easton took. Accept a fair split of the divorce and the house, or we'll ensure you and your son end up with nothing. Facing them, I replied calmly yet firmly, I was the one who made the initial payment for our house. Despite your mother's claims, we both know the truth. Barbara's face reddened even more. Lies. My money purchased that house, and we'll prove it. When we're through, you'll be destitute, she seethed, with Easton supporting her venomous stance. It's time you accepted reality, Kara. You and your son will lose the house, Easton added. At that moment, my mother, who had been quiet, spoke up authoritatively. You have no right to come here and harass my daughter. Leave now. Barbara was far from finished. She sneered and turned her fury towards me again. You think you're clever, don't you? Well, let me tell you, young lady, it's not just about the house. You're going to lose everything because you're so stubborn. That was the moment my father stepped forward, his towering presence overshadowing both Easton and Barbara. I think you've said enough. Both of you, get out of my house now, or I'll throw you out myself, he declared firmly. Easton's confident demeanor waned under my father's stern gaze. Barbara, muttering under her breath, hastily tugged at his arm, urging him to leave. Once they had left, the house returned to silence, save for the pounding of my own heart. My hands trembled, and tears threatened to spill over. Later that evening, after we had cleared the dinner table and were trying to return to some sense of normalcy, Austin, who had been unusually quiet throughout the meal, finally spoke. Mom, I remembered something odd, he started hesitantly. A couple of weeks ago, I saw Dad and Aunt Dahlia at the mall. They were at a jewelry store. My heart sank. Dahlia had been my best friend since high school. What were they doing there? I asked, though I was not sure I wanted to hear the answer. They were picking out jewelry. Aunt Dahlia said it was a gift for you, Austin replied, his brow furrowed in confusion. A gift for me? I echoed, a wave of hope and suspicion washing over me. Yeah, but he never gave you any jewelry. That's strange. They seemed very close, and Aunt Dahlia even told me to keep it a surprise, Austin added, clearly disturbed by the memory. My mind raced with questions. Why would Easton buy jewelry with Dahlia and not give it to me? Especially after today's heated confrontation, everything felt more suspect. I need to get to the bottom of this, I murmured, more to myself than anyone else. I'm going to hire a private detective. I need to know what's going on. Determination solidified within me. If Easton was cheating on me with my best friend, I deserved to know the truth. A couple of weeks later, the private detective I hired called me, his tone somber. Mrs. Jones, please come to my office to discuss my findings, he requested. My stomach churned the entire drive there. Upon arrival, he handed me a thick envelope. I'm sorry to say, but the news isn't good, he began, laying out the evidence. He had followed Easton and Dahlia, taking photos and collecting receipts from their excursions, including an expensive necklace that I had never received. Your husband and Mrs. Dahlia have been having an affair. I'm very sorry, he concluded. The drive home was a blur. When I finally arrived at my parents' house, I found them in the living room. I shared everything with them, showing the photos and receipts. The shock on their faces mirrored the hollow feeling inside me. "Oh, Kara, I'm so sorry," my mom said, her voice breaking as she came over to embrace me. "That woman has been in our home, shared our meals. How could she?" I murmured in disbelief, a tear rolling down my cheek. "All these years, she's been lying to me, to all of us." Austin entered the room then, catching the tail end of the conversation. "Mom, are you okay? What happened?" I wiped away my tears and managed a small smile for him, trying to muster the strength to face what would come next. "It's going to be okay, honey," I reassured Austin gently. "We've just uncovered some distressing news about your dad and Dahlia, but we'll get through this together. What matters is that we have each other." That night, as I lay in bed, the sting of betrayal gnawed at me. Easton and Dahlia had lied to me, betrayed my trust, and jeopardized our family's financial security. Yet, amidst the turmoil, I resolved not to be defeated by their deceit. I was determined to stand strong for my son and reclaim the life we deserved. The following morning, fueled by a mix of determination and the need for answers, I called Dahlia and asked her to meet me for a chat. 3 hours later, we sat across from each other at the small cafe where we used to have our friendly catch-ups, the irony of the setting not lost on me. Dahlia seemed unaware of the emotional tempest swirling inside me, smiling casually as she sipped her coffee. "So, how's Austin doing? He must be gearing up for college soon," she asked, her tone light and airy. I fixed a steady gaze on her, my voice taut. "Actually, Austin's not doing well. He's been hurt by his father's affair." Her smile wavered, and she set down her cup, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. "Kara, what are you talking about?" "I know about you and Easton, Dahlia," I said calmly but firmly. "I've seen undeniable proof." Her complexion paled, her eyes dropping to the table. "Kara, I can explain," she stammered, her fingers nervously twisting a new ring on her finger. I pointed sharply at her ring. "That ring you're wearing? It was bought with money meant for Austin's education, money that Easton took from our savings." Dahlia's eyes brimmed with tears, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I didn't know, Kara. He told me he was getting a divorce, that it was all but finalized." I scoffed, the mix of anger and betrayal boiling inside me. "And you believed him? After all these years, you just accepted his word without thinking to check with me, without considering Austin?" She wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. "He promised he'd leave the house and everything to you. He said he had enough money to handle it all and wanted to leave with dignity." "That's a lie, Dahlia. He's left us with nothing. Did you know there's another woman, someone from his office? Were you aware of her?" My words were harsh, but necessary. Dahlia shook her head, her expression collapsing into sobs. "No, I didn't know. I'm so sorry, Kara. I've been so foolish." For a moment, I simply watched her cry, the years of our friendship wrestling with the fresh, raw wound of her betrayal. Gradually, my anger began to ebb, replaced by a profound weariness. "Look, Dahlia, I don't know if we can ever return to how things were, but I appreciate your honesty now." She took a deep breath and nodded, sliding the ring off her finger and pushing it across the table toward me. "I'll return everything. The jewelry, the car he bought me. It's the least I can do. It won't make up for everything. The money's gone, and Austin's future is uncertain, but it's a start." We sat in silence for a while, the magnitude of the situation weighing heavily on us. Then, Dahlia looked up, her eyes red but determined. "Let me help, Kara. Let's figure this out together. For what it's worth, I want to make things right." We spent the next hour talking, not about the past, but about how to address the immediate challenges and ensure Austin's future. Dahlia's offer to help, though it couldn't undo the past, was a step toward mending the breach and perhaps forging a path forward amidst the wreckage. But it was all about how we could move forward. Dahlia handed me the car keys that Easton had bought for her, along with a bag containing all the jewelry. "I'll do whatever it takes, Kara. I owe you that much," she assured me. The morning after our heart-to-heart, Dahlia called me early urgency coloring her voice. Kara, you won't believe this. Easton's company is hosting a lavish party tonight for his promotion. It's happening at that upscale venue downtown, and all the top executives will be there. That evening, we arrived at the sleek, modern restaurant, a hub of high spirits and laughter filled with Easton's colleagues. I spotted Easton, the very image of success, laughing and clinking glasses. Seeing him so carefree only fueled my resolve. Dahlia nudged me, whispering, "Ready as I'll ever be." Before I could second-guess myself, I stepped forward. Easton caught sight of me, his smile disappearing and morphing into a scowl. "What the hell are you doing here, Kara? You need to leave," he hissed. His attempt to intimidate me in front of his peers only made me stronger. "Actually, I'm here to congratulate you, Easton. Mind if I borrow the spotlight for a moment?" His confusion was palpable, and he hesitated. Mr. Jackson, his boss, noticing the exchange, gestured for me to continue. "Please, let's hear what Kara has to say." With all eyes on me, I moved towards the front where a projector was set up for presentations. "Thank you, Mr. Jackson," I began, the room quieting as I clicked the remote and images flashed on the screen, photos of Easton and the financial director in compromising positions. The crowd gasped and whispers filled the air. Not only has Easton been unfaithful to his family, but he's also been embezzling from the company. Here are the financial records to prove it. The next slide showed documents detailing the fraud Easton and his mistress had committed. The room erupted into chaos. Easton tried to protest, his face turning red. "This is nonsense. She's just a scorned woman." But Mr. Jackson, who had been examining the documents closely, silenced him with a raise of his hand. "Enough, Easton. If these documents are real, you've not only betrayed your family, but also this company." He then turned to the financial director, who was now as pale as a ghost. "And you, Jessica, will need to explain a lot. Security, please escort these two out until we sort this out. Consider yourselves suspended, effective immediately." Easton looked as though he'd been slapped. His eyes darted around the room, finding no allies. He glanced at me, fury and disbelief in his eyes, but I wasn't done yet. "I trusted you, Easton. More than that, I loved you. We built a life together, a family, and you threw it all away. I hope it was worth it." With those final words, I walked away, Dahlia at my side, her hand squeezing mine in support. The last thing I heard was Mr. Jackson calling for calm as we exited the building. After Easton and his mistress were fired, they had to return all the stolen money to avoid a lawsuit. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Now, I was bracing myself for the biggest fight yet, the divorce and the battle for our house. I sat there with my lawyer, papers neatly stacked in front of us. Across the room, Easton and his lawyer looked less confident than usual. Barbara sat right behind him, her eyes shooting daggers across the room at me as the judge entered. Everyone rose, the room steeped in formality. "Please be seated," the judge commanded, and the session began. My lawyer presented the case succinctly to the judge. We presented undeniable evidence of Mr. Jones's infidelities and the misappropriation of our shared finances. The courtroom reviewed bank records, photographs, and witness testimonies that illustrated how Mr. Jones had diverted our family funds to sustain his extramarital activities. As each piece of evidence was unveiled, Easton's complexion turned a ghostly white. Then it was Barbara's turn to speak. She stood, her voice quivering with anger. "Your Honor, these accusations are fabrications. My son is a decent man pushed to the brink by Kara. Moreover, the house they resided in was purchased with my finances." Her voice pierced the silent courtroom, sounding both shrill and desperate. I held back, my fists clenched under the table to maintain my composure. "Mrs. Jones, can you substantiate your claims regarding the house?" the judge asked, his tone marked by skepticism. "I don't have the papers here, but it's true," she faltered. At that moment, my lawyer approached the bench, presenting a stack of documents to the judge. "Your Honor, these are the bank statements and mortgage records clearly indicating that Kara made the initial down payment and all subsequent mortgage payments from her personal account. The judge nodded, meticulously examining the documents. Easton whispered frantically to his lawyer, a visible air of defeat enveloping him. Suddenly, Barbara, unable to restrain herself, stood up and blurted out, "This is all your fault, Kara. If you had been a better wife, my son wouldn't have strayed to other women." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as the judge struck his gavel for order. "Mrs. Jones, another outburst like that, and I will have you removed from this courtroom," he warned sternly. Barbara slumped back into her seat, muttering to herself. After careful deliberation, the judge finally announced, having reviewed all the evidence, "It is clear that Mr. Jones has not only been unfaithful, but has also grossly mismanaged marital assets. The court rules in favor of Mrs. Jones. The house shall remain under her ownership. Mr. Jones is ordered to return 70% of the misused funds, along with additional compensation for emotional distress awarded to Mrs. Jones." Easton appeared as if he had been struck, his head hanging low in defeat. Outside the courtroom, I took a deep breath, savoring the freedom from the web of lies and deceit that had shadowed our lives. Easton had witnessed everything, the disgraceful actions of his father and grandmother leaving a profound impact on him. Later that evening, Easton approached me, a serious look in his eyes. "Mom, I can't see Dad anymore, not after everything. And I don't think I want to talk to Grandma Barbara either," he declared, his voice steady yet tinged with pain. I pulled him into a comforting embrace, my heart heavy for him. "It's okay, Easton. You do what feels right for you. I'm here, no matter what." In the weeks that followed, staying in the house that once symbolized our family's unity felt increasingly untenable. I decided to sell it, offering Easton and myself a chance for a genuine fresh start. We moved to a smaller, cozier place closer to the college Easton hoped to attend, a new beginning within reach of his promising future. As for Easton, his downfall was swift and severe. His career crumbled, and his reputation was left in tatters. The last I heard, he was still grappling with the consequences of his actions. Easton was now making ends meet by taking on odd jobs and depending on his mother's pension, especially after the substantial amount he had to repay us. One evening, while Easton and I were setting up our new living room, he paused from arranging his books and looked at me thoughtfully. "Mom, do you ever feel bad for Dad?" His question was simple, but laden with complex emotions. I stopped what I was doing and chose my words with care. "Easton, I feel sad about how everything turned out, but feeling bad for him. He made his choices, honey. We all have to live with the consequences of our actions. What's important is that we learn from them and aim to be better." Easton nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "I want to be nothing like him, Mom. And you won't be," I reassured him, tousling his hair affectionately. "You're your own person, and you have your own choices to make." I was proud of the young man he was becoming. Life gradually settled into a new rhythm for us. Our days were filled with work, school, and cozy movie nights in our snug living room. I continued working at the grocery store, finding comfort in the routine as it anchored me through the transition. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, our new home began to feel like a part of us, much like the garden we nurtured together, slowly, with care and a lot of love. One evening, as I sat reflecting over a cup of tea, I realized that despite the trials, the heartaches, and the upheaval, we had emerged stronger. I had fought for my son's future and my peace of mind, and we had triumphed.